Welcome to Wendnezday Moon. Well, today I'm in the kitchen doing what I love doing, and I'm making an egg souffle today. So I'm just going to enjoy a couple of different ingredients that just get my day on its way. However, what I wanted to talk about today was about knowing where you come from and knowing the stories and being connected to those stories. And releasing the fear of dealing with those stories. That is probably one of the hardest things as a people that we've had to work through, because we've been removed from our stories. Our stories were, hold on just one second, I gotta get an onion. Our stories were kept from us. However, there are stories that our parents told us, and we may not have fully understood how they apply to our lives. However, those stories, those people still have energy that affect our lives today. And unless we understand those stories and we deal with those stories, then we will keep living those same sort of scenarios in our life. And it can be any type of thing. I mean, it can go from money to emotional, mental issues in a family, financial issues in a family. These stories affect us greatly. These experiences, and when families put a hush on finding out the truth about something and not dealing with it as a family, then, hold on just one second. Then what you have is that energy that sits there waiting to be dealt with. And there's pain. Families aren't able to move forward. And children should know what those stories are. So when certain things come up in another child, then you will know which ancestor that was connected to. And you will know how to deal with that ancestor that has been returned. So, and this was the way with our older family members. Let me just say our indigenous family members. They wouldn't name a child right away. They would watch the child, and they would see how the child developed a certain particular piece of that personality, and then they could say, oh, this is so-and-so has returned. And they would watch the mannerisms of the child and know what family member that was, because see, the oral tradition and the oral stories are still present in a household. Well, there was some piece of that was lost in our families, in our connections, and a lot of that happened when we began to be educated outside of our own households. So when you have education that comes to you from an outside resource, then you have to depend on how they develop the story. And if you are not familiar with the language that the story is being developed in, and then you have to concede to accept how the story is told based on how you are understanding that language, then then there's a lot of miscommunication and lost information, or information that's being given to you purposely that is a lie, so that you would only believe a certain thing. Now, that's a whole nother subject, and I can go into that later on. However, what I do want to say to you is get to the bottom of the stories in your family. Start asking questions. If you are someone who can't keep a relationship, you need to figure out who in your family had issues with keeping a marriage mate or keeping a relationship, or if this person if you find yourself, you're a very promiscuous person and you go through relationships one after the other, you gotta ask, who is that? And why am I having this issue? Why is that energy with me? And why can't I settle down? It's the same way as a family who has issues with money. I know at one point in time, I know my story in regards to money with my mother. My mother would go through money like water. But that came from somewhere. Like, she just was very, I don't even want to say wasteful. She had a very expensive taste. When we were young, she shopped for clothing from Spiegel's, and from Saks Fifth Avenue, and this is how we had our young adulthood, our young childhood with clothing like that. Our furniture was very nice, and that's the way my mother was raised. And so, therefore, my dad did whatever he could to buy my mother the homes that she had. And in the course of her lifetime, he had bought her 7 homes. So she always had a house. My mother always had a house, but we were always moving. So that was an issue. Why are we always moving? Now, here I am, the daughter who, out of the oldest of the 5 children, was always moving. Like literally, with my first husband, we were always in a new home. Always, literally, I think probably every year a new home. Every single year, a year and a half, a new home. And so, until I started paying attention to that, and look, it took this many years, and it does, because we don't even understand or comprehend or understand why these things happen. We don't even understand that this has everything to do with our spiritual life. But I'd ask myself, what is that? And why is that happening? And who did that belong to in my family? And I need to go to that in my meditation, in my spirit, and I need to put that to rest, because there's a fear that's attached to that. Now, just so you know, my clock says 11:22, and I'm getting like ding, ding, dings in my head, and it's like, oh, you just hit a marker. It also let me know that there were people in my life that I was connecting to that also was this type of energy. And when you recognize that, you got to look at patterns. You have to discern who in my life is like that. And then you have to adjust your relationship with them. And now, if you are a person who's conscious, you will actually begin to deal with the energy from past family members, so that you can stop that from progressing forward, so that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren do not have to have the same physical realities of a trait that's coming through energetically. But you gotta do your history work. You've got to know who you are. So what I'm going to encourage each one of you to do is go to a website called 23andMe. Now, I'm not an affiliate or anything like that. However, especially if you are indigenous, you need to know who you are and how you're connected, and you need to tie yourself to the land of where you come from. So if you come from the Americas, you need to know you're from here, but or anywhere else, okay, so for that matter. However, this is about knowing who you are, and when you open up that data, this opens up conversation so that you can connect with family members. And you need to have those conversations, those hard ones, like who had issues with money, who had issues keeping a husband, who had issues keeping wives or a wife, who was promiscuous, who had drug issues, who had addiction issues. Let me think. You know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Who had issues with money? Who had issues with living? Who was a runaway? I mean, those are stories you need to know. Who had mental issues? If this person had mental issues, you need to know that from grandmother, aunts, and uncles. You need to know those issues so that when you see them show up in your children, you know how to deal with them, and you know the ancestor and the spirit that you need to speak to in regards to this, and you know how to get help so that you can eliminate these sort of issues. So that is my daily tip today. Get into your ancestry so you know who you are, and you can deal with the problems that you may be facing, so you can eliminate those issues, and your manifesting power becomes stronger, because you're settling old debt, old spiritual debt. You're canceling energy that is running rampant in a family. That's real. Energy doesn't stop just because the person is deceased. Energy just keeps going, and it will run through a household until you acknowledge it and put a stop to it. But everybody has to be at that place. That doesn't mean everybody has to accept that that's what you're doing. It's what you are doing for yourself. And that's the most important thing. Okay, well, that is this Monday message. Tomorrow's message will be about the new moon. We have the new moon, and oh my gosh, you know that is some powerful work there. So I'll have some wonderful tips that we can use for a new moon ceremony for tomorrow evening. With that being said, you have an amazing day. It's Daily Inspiration, Daily Divine. This is your Wednesday Moon Wisdom with Michaela, Rena, Tendaji.